Hi, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 152, going through the evolution of your demo reel and all the different types that you're going to build over your career. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Okay, welcome to a brand new episode. So this episode is going to be really fun. You might have noticed that there's been a lot of demo reel material that I've been building at the moment, or more specifically around how to get a job and a lot of career-related stuff. Now, that's a mixture of a few different things. One of those is that I've gotten a lot of feedback about doing more solo episodes. So I'm still doing a lot of interviews. I've got a really awesome one coming up next with Ryan Connolly, which is going to be really cool. Obviously, last episode I did with Real Time UK, which is really cool as well. And I've got some really amazing ones coming up, but I wanted to start making more time to do the solo episodes. I find that interviews are really easy because you just book it and say, hey, let's have a beer and let's shoot the shit. Doing these takes like days of prep, days of note-taking, days of fleshing and building and structuring everything out. But I want these and this podcast to be as beneficial to you as possible. So you might notice there's a lot more solo episodes, a lot more content-driven episodes specifically around this stuff. Now, that being said, I am going to be grouping these around too to kind of make it more like a course. And I think that you'll start to see a pattern where it is like one of the last episodes was how to get anyone's email address. We go through that whole system. And that's because I want you to learn to be able to find and identify the people you want to contact and then how to get their email addresses. But then on top of that, the benefit of building relationships long-term. I'm actually going to teach you my outreach system that I use daily to get work as well. So there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff that we're going to be doing. And I have some really awesome episodes coming up. In fact, this is way too early to be mentioning this stuff, but I just got approached by Cinefx to do a podcast episode. And I was like completely drunk last night. I was hanging out with a director buddy of mine, which, some really cool stuff coming up. And I hadn't logged into LinkedIn in a while. And yeah, it was just amazing to kind of go into my inbox and to see like all of this crazy stuff that I've still got to reply to, but it's really great to realize that occasionally, like all these opportunities. And again, like this is what it's kind of about. I want you to get to a point, and it might seem so far-fetched right now, but where you are able to drunkenly go in your inbox and see all these opportunities starting to come up. So the ultimate goal of these episodes is to be able to go to your inbox and see job offer after job offer after job offer. That is what I'm going for, and that's what I'm trying to teach you. So I want you to stitch together these episodes as a step-by-step on how to do this stuff. Now, again, I'm always going to say it because I think that a lot of us are going to disregard it and say, well, I'm just going to let my demo reel speak for itself, and I don't need to do all this work because that sounds like work. I'm a hustler and I work so hard, but then I'm not willing to actually put in any work. I'm making fun of it, but honestly, I think that is really the vicious circle that a lot of us have. Like, I don't have enough time, or that requires work, that's silly, I'm going to disregard it. And we go back to the hard skills. So in other words, knowing our software and not really knowing how to sell ourselves or position ourselves. So this is what that's all about. And then from there, we're going to get into some other really cool stuff. Again, I want to build this up. We're going to be really fleshing out the rest of the year, doing a lot of really amazing episodes, going really deep on a lot of stuff. I realize there's a lot of us who listen to the podcast who are actually in different careers. We want to switch over into visual effects. So that's something that I'm going to be working on pretty soon as well. I'm actually working with my team at the moment. Shout out to my team who will be listening to this right now, with building out a lot of content around switching careers later in your career. So obviously when we have a lot more responsibility, family and everything else, we can't just like click our fingers and say, I'm going to go do visual effects. So how do you do that? So we're going to be doing that. I'm going to be working on some brand new training pretty soon around Venom. And I got some really cool stuff around that I want to come out around the same time that the movie comes out. So as the film comes out, I'm going to be showing you how to create a lot of the effects for this. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of fun, lots of cool stuff coming. It's going to be an exciting few months, that's for sure. So that being said, let's dive in. I'm Allan McKay, and I wanted to quickly build this video, which was about the evolution of your reel. So I think a lot of us have the misunderstanding that, we're going to build out a reel when we first get started, and we're going to, update it with all of our latest work as we go through. And for me, I didn't want this to be something that's too overcomplicated or anything like that, but I basically just wanted to talk about the types of reels that you're going to have over your career. Because initially we started out with a student reel, and then we're going to get into a generalist reel, and we kind of build it out from there. But they all have a different purpose, and I think that's the important thing as we get into this, is understanding what each one is for and when to use it, and just understanding like there are different types out there as we continue down our career. So as we go through this, I'm going to try and make this a short video and try and get to everything as quick as I can. But in the beginning, we all start out with a student reel. Okay, this is the one that is going to land us our first job. And usually it's going to be the one that's all of our personal work. It's rarely ever a team collaboration, but it's something that is able to emphasize that we have potential, please hire us. Now, there's a lot of rules around like what to put on a reel, start with your best shot, keep it tight, all of these different things. If you're interested, I have my Ultimate Demo Reel book that I've written, and it's available on Amazon for about $20 and Audible as an audiobook for about $35. You can get it free on my website at allanmckay.com/myreel if you want to get access to that as well. So that goes through a lot of the recipe of how to build the perfect reel that will land you the right job, and it's from the perspective of someone who actually does the hiring. Rather than being from someone who is either a journalist or is an artist who assumes what might go on. I'm actually someone who hires people and builds teams for a living. So I definitely have a lot of experience in this area. But that being said, your reel in the beginning is definitely one that's always going to be crude. It's going to look terrible, but you want to keep it as short as possible and just showcase those couple of shots that are going to give you the opportunity. So don't make it too long, don't make it too convoluted, and just kind of focus on being able to prove the one thing that you just want to prove, that you can sit down tomorrow at a desk and be able to do the work. That's the only thing that's important with your student reel, is to be able to showcase that you're the right person for the job, that you could sit down tomorrow and do the job. Now, at the same time, when I say a student reel, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily a student. It can also mean that you're 40 years old and you want to transition your career. I've tested now tens of thousands of people about like where they're at in their career, and it's very common for a lot of us to be in a different industry, and we want to get into games, we want to get into design, we want to get into film, we want to make illustration or art our career, whatever it might be. So it's very common. So when I say your student reel, that can still mean that you're not a student. Okay, I never went to college for 3D or anything like that. There was no colleges around when I first got into it. But again, your student reel is just a way of saying your first reel. Now, the biggest key thing about your student reel is that when you get that first job, that's when you get your reel and you put it in an archive somewhere and you never touch it ever again. I always say that your first reel should be a throwaway. In other words, you never want this stuff to land on any other reel that you do, because your first reel is basically there to get that first job. And then from there, anytime you put stuff from your old reel onto a new reel, all it's going to remind people of is, hey, I'm fairly new in the industry. I don't have enough new content to fill things out. Okay. The other thing I wanted to emphasize, and I've got this in the book as well, about the demo reel myths, okay? And one of the big misunderstandings I keep hearing all the time is that your reel needs to tell a story, and that's so wrong. Your reel needs to demonstrate that you can sit down tomorrow and do the job. That's the only thing that it should be able to do. Now, if you want to be creative, if you want to tell a story, I suggest going and making a short film, okay? Rather than trying to make a short film for a demo reel, do it properly. Go get it out there. Do the circuits. Try and get recognition. The key thing is with your short film, that's something that can get you a lot of recognition. It can get your name out there, and potentially it could allow you to fast track your career. I've got a lot of friends who've won Oscars or other animation awards, things like that, from their short films, and has jump-started their career at Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar. So if you're going to do it right. Make it a short film. You don't need your reel to tell a story. If you are, you might as well go all out. There's not much difference other than one is submitted into all the film circuits, whereas the other one is being submitted directly to studios who aren't looking to hire you to make a short film. Okay, so that's the key thing I wanted to bring up, is that it might be cute and everything, but you might as well just go all out. Don't just do it on the chance that they might say, well, wow, this person's really creative, because they're hiring you typically to do a certain task. So demonstrate that task, focus on that. And it's okay to do both, but I'm just saying you don't want to get distracted by trying to do too much, because that's the biggest thing that I see. Again, with student reels, I've had so many times someone ask me for advice. They say, hey, what should I do? And I say, just make one shot. Make one really amazing shot, because it's all that it takes. Now, the one shot can completely blow up and give you all the opportunities, but if you then overcomplicate it with 20 shots or something, you're more than likely not going to finish. Now, on top of that, if you do, it's probably not going to look that good. So keep that in mind. And at the same time, like, keep it simple. When you're focusing on your reel, it shouldn't be too overcomplicated. I've had some people where they say, like, what should I do? I say one shot. Then they're like, well, what if I did like a missile hitting a bridge? I'm like, yes, go do that. They're like, and then it falls in the water and it causes this tsunami, and the tsunami hits the city and everything gets destroyed. It's like, no, don't do that. So again, keep it realistic. Try and focus on just something that you can really polish and make amazing, rather than trying to make it too complicated, too grandiose, all of those things. Because again, you're probably not going to finish it, or you are going to get overwhelmed, and the thing's going to get so heavy and slow that you're going to make it look like crap because you've overcomplicated it too much. So think about all these things. Once you get that job, once you get your first job, like I said, your first reel is a throwaway. So when you get into the industry, what you want to do is initially start out by typically freelancing commercials if you're going to work in post-production. I say that because video games, especially AAA video games, the turnaround's about 3 years typically. And if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to get that much responsibility. Same thing with feature film. I've seen people who go on to work on Happy Feet or other movies. They end up doing some snowflakes in the background, and that's kind of like all they're going to do for the next 3 years. So when you have a reel at the end of that 3 years, you don't really have that much to show for it, nor do you have much experience because you're not exposed to too much. You're kind of put into that cog. You're doing that one thing over and over. You're not getting challenged and pushed. Now, let's just say, and you can apply this to whatever industry you're in, but let's just say that you're in visual effects. I'd recommend going into commercials. Because that way, typically a project might be 2 weeks to turn around to get onto the next one. So every 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to get a new project, new challenges, new deadlines. You're going to keep pushing yourself. On top of that, certain studios you go to, you're probably not going to be doing the same thing every single time. I always recommend starting as a generalist and then specializing later. I have a video on being a specialist or generalist and getting into the whole thing. But more importantly, when you're first starting out, that's the easiest thing to do, is to initially go to somewhere that you're going to get given as much challenges as you can, or as many challenges as you can, and pushed in as many directions as you can. The critical thing about that is it allows you to then have the opportunities to do things that you might have been exposed to before. More importantly, you might have to find something that you're actually really good at that you never would have thought of otherwise. The best part is that it really makes you a more rounded artist. You're able to model, you're able to do animation, you're able to do lighting, rendering, texturing, shaders, all these different things. So the more that you're exposed to all this stuff, the better it's going to make you as a well-rounded artist. Later, you can specialize. So the cool thing is that, let's say you work 2 weeks, every single project, then there's about 20, 30 commercials you're going to work on in a year. So either way, if you end up with 15 or 20 projects, even 10 projects, that's plenty of material. That's also plenty of experience that you've gotten, rather than doing that one task over and over and over for 3 years. So usually within the first 1 or 2 years of working commercials, you've got enough stuff on your reel that you could then start looking for work in a specific discipline if you wanted to do that. Either way, you can cut a new reel, and that new reel's got so much new content on there, you start negotiating better money, and you can showcase yourself as much stronger artist than you would have if you were to, again, work at a bigger place that has a slower turnaround on projects and less challenges. And the cool thing is, on top of all this, it's a fresh new reel with all production work that not only have you touched, but on top of that, you've got a team of professionals. Everyone who's really good at their one thing is all chipping in and perfecting this commercial and making it look amazing. Okay, so compositors, lighters, shading artists, modelers, all of us together are banding together to make these amazing visuals. So your reel is going to look amazing. That's why your first reel is a throwaway, because all it takes is to get a reel, and I get them all the time, where we'll be looking it over and it looks amazing. It's like cool, 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 cool. And then that one shot that you're so proud of, or that people keep mentioning was so cool, or you put so much work into it, you deserve to keep it around for another round. All it takes is that one shot from your original reel, and then the resume comes out. We always grab the resume and say, oh, wait a minute, how much experience does this person have? Oh, it's their first year. Because that one thing is going to pull you back to, I don't have that much experience. So your first reel is a throwaway, so that way your next reel is completely polished. It's your first production reel. Okay, so keep that in mind, that your first reel, outside of your student reel, is a production reel, and it's entirely production work, okay? So bit by bit, you're going to go down this evolution, but I think starting as a generalist is always the best way. So that way, you're going to get more exposure to everything, and on top of that, you're going to be a better artist for it, and you're going to figure out things that you're actually naturally good at along the way too. And better yet, you have a better understanding of how everything works, so that way you can be a better artist, knowing what you need to deliver to the compositor, knowing what their needs are. Also knowing what to communicate to the modeler, so that way, let's say you're doing effects and you need to destroy a building, you're able to communicate that you need closed surfaces, everything needs to be clean, no penetrating edges, things like that. So again, the more that you understand everything, the better you can function as an artist. Beyond that, you get into being a specialist. And it's typically what most people do. Not everyone does. Some people stay as a generalist, and that's completely fine. But if you want to go specialize, I think it's better because you're able to laser focus down and be able to brand yourself, communicate, that one service that you're able to provide. And that way you have people have an itch, you're able to scratch it. In other words, people have a need, you're able to say, yeah, I do water effects. And they say, great, we need a water effects person. It's a lot easier to stand out from the crowd than any other way. So this is, in my opinion, the best way to go is to begin to specialize for a while. Eventually, your specialist reel is going to be one of those things that bit by bit, you're going to get enough material that you can start saying, hey, I'm doing water effects or I'm doing rigging, whatever it might be. And that reel essentially is able to communicate more laser focused that you're going to be hired for these specific things. Usually it means you can negotiate up your money at that point. There's a lot of things you can do, but more importantly, it's going to make you stand out because you're able to have that one thing that you're able to put your hand up and say, this is what I do and I do it really well. So your specialist reel is going to communicate that. It's going to be all just that thing. It doesn't mean you might showcase some other things on top of there, but for the most part, you would start to eliminate all the other production stuff and just focus on sending one message, one communication line that you're doing this one area. So you build a specialist reel from there. A lot of us will go into more of a supervisor role. So usually at that point, 5 years, 10 years from now, you might become a lead in your department. So let's say if you're doing effects, you might become an effects lead. And so you build an effects lead reel potentially, or you eventually become a supervisor. You begin to create a supervisor reel. Now, I will say that for me, I have many different reels, but I typically use my effects reel for work because I'm able to communicate what I've actually done myself. Because I can have a supervisor reel, and that's going to be something that you build over time. So initially, when you get a job as a supervisor, it's something that you get knighted into. I get people all the time email me saying, hey, can I call myself a technical director? And I'm like, yeah, you can. You can absolutely call yourself a technical director. But you can't call yourself a supervisor because you need someone to give you that opportunity to say, okay, you're now a supervisor. I knight thee. You're a supervisor now. So when you officially get the role of being able to supervise something, then from there you try to get more of that work if it's something you enjoy. I've got friends and colleagues that supervise for a bit and they don't enjoy it. They want to go back to being an artist on the box. And some supervisors are artists on the box too. Some people don't like being a supervisor because some studios have policies that supervisors don't get paid on an hourly rate and they don't get double time or time and a half either. So there's all these different pros and cons to being a soup. But if you want to do that, usually you might get a few opportunities to be a supervisor and you can build up your reel over time. But the first few jobs that you get probably aren't going to be enough on your reel to be able to have a supervisor reel. So you might be supervising for a lot longer than before you actually end up with a supervisor reel. So just keep that in mind. But eventually you'll have enough work that you can say, all right, this is my supervisor reel, and it's typically your work, but also other people's work as well. And this is something that you can say that I managed these artists and I made sure that the client, the director, the agency, whoever it was, got what they requested. So at this point, there's a lot of different directions you can take, and I want to keep this short. I don't want this to be like every single thing that you could do out there, but at this point, there are some people who decide either going from CG supervisor to visual effects supervisor, then you might go client side. So in other words, you build a reel out that you go to agencies and you say, hey, I want you guys to represent me, and try to put me onto different projects. So they'll have your reel and they'll go to producers and directors and say, hey, do you want this visual effects supervisor to work on your movie? And they'll be responsible for handling all of the visual effects facilities. And that's something that I've done a bit in the past. Either you're client side or you're working for a studio and you're hired by that client-side soup. So usually that's what will happen, but that's one direction you can take. And if that's the case, then again, you're building out a reel that usually is more of a sample reel. It's something that showcases a huge variety of what you can do rather than it being one specific thing, because you need to be able to show that you've got chops in all the areas that you can bring it to the table when it comes to being able to handle a whole production. But the other flip side is that maybe you want to be a studio instead. Maybe you want to own your own company, create your own company, and hire other artists. So at that point, you would begin to create a studio reel. And a studio reel is going to showcase all the services that you want to provide. And this is usually going to be for agencies, for clients, less likely for studios, but again, you might want to try and get outsource or overflow from other studios as well. And that's a good way to kind of get into feature film, is to go to certain studios, and if they have a couple of shots that are outside of their bandwidth, then they can say, go do this. And eventually you get competent and confident enough doing those that you can start pitching and bidding on feature films yourself. So there's a lot of different opportunities and things that you can do from here. But the main thing is that your studio reel is going to be much bigger. Usually my personal reels are about 60 to 90 seconds. You want them to keep short and engaged. You want people to be able to say that they saw just enough, not they saw too much. It's okay for them to come back and say, can we see more material? But you don't want to have one or two things on there that was just a little bit too much, and they're like, I'm not as blown away after, I was till I saw that one shot. So it's better to keep it tight and engaging and captivating the entire way through. But when it comes to a studio reel, it's very different because it's more of a sample reel. The amount of times that I send out a reel and then an agency comes back and says, hey, can you do what you did on that part of your reel for us? So it's more to be able to showcase all the things you can do, and it's more for them to be able to see that you're the obvious expert that they want to hire. But eventually, as a studio, you want to specialize and have very laser-focused reels as well. So eventually, you might have a character animation reel, you might have a effects reel, you might even have like a crowds reel, a fire reel, a car reel, a game cinematics reel. All these very specific ones that you can send out that are solely focused on that one thing for that one client. So that way it's super focused and it's able to qualify you above everyone else, because theirs might have green screen removal and might have some cartoon stuff and some photoreal stuff. Yours just has that one thing, and you're basically saying, this is what we do, this is what we can do for you. And that way it's very captivating, it's very laser focused. So usually for me, I've had a studio reel, and then I'll have like multiple specialized reels that I'll send out depending on who they are. Again, if it's the right client, I'll go and cut a very specific reel. If I know that they're doing Marvel stuff, then I might try and focus on sci-fi, magic, all the things that are more around the superhero kind of effects that they want to see, or if they're doing digital cities, digital doubles, whatever it might be, to communicate that, again, this is what I can do for them. So creating custom reels is another thing on top of the specialist reels. And then you have the broader ones of, this is our studio reel. Okay, so you have different ones for different purposes. And you go beyond that even further. But the general thing is that you start as a student, you go generalist, you go specialist, then eventually you can go into supervisor and eventually client side, or you can create your own studio reel, go from there. It really depends on what you're doing and how you want to approach getting clients, but typically this is how you want to communicate and have that evolution of a reel. I know I kind of plowed through this so quickly, but I wanted to give that bird's eye view, the 30,000 foot view of these are the types of reels to think about over your career. Okay, so I hope that helped a lot. And if you have any questions, leave a comment below and let me know. Again, I want to engage with everyone as much as I can. Any opinions you want to share, anything like that as well. More importantly, like I said, I kind of just scratched the surface on this, but I want you to start to kind of think about all the requirements that go into this and like where you'll eventually take your reel as well as potentially your career as well, because there's definitely different things you want to do. Like I said, this is just the beginning of what you can cover. If you want to check out the Ultimate Demo Reel book, go to allanmckay.com/myreel. I'll leave a link in the show notes. But there, everything's explained much more thoroughly and in depth. But this is a chance, like I said, to just kind of communicate a bird's eye view of what to expect going in. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Now, next episode, I'm going to be back talking with Ryan Connolly from Film Riot about his new short film that he directed, Ballistic. It's going to be really awesome. You have to check out the short film. That's your homework between now and next episode. Check it out, and we're going to get into really in depth into the whole filmmaking process It's going to be a lot of fun. So that being said, finally, if you want to check out the show notes, go to allanmckay.com/152 for episode 152. Finally, if you don't already have it, get the free Ultimate Demo Reel book at allanmckay.com/myreel. And right now, that's free, as well as the free advanced masterclass, which is a 2-hour masterclass video as well. So grab those at allanmckay.com/myreel. Okay, until then, rock on.